Gemara in Yuma, Daf Nun Daled Amud Beis, says Omar Reish Lakish, B'shah shenichnasu nochim leheichel, but when the armies, the non-Jewish armies, came into the heichel, Ro kruvim ha'ma'orin zeh b'zeh, the kruvim that sat on top of the Aron were embracing each other. Everybody tries to understand what's pshat, something which doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. Why doesn't it make any sense? The Gemara Bava Basra, Tzadik Tes Samad Aleph, says like this: Keitzad ein oimdim. Just talking about the way the kruvim were built. How did they sit on top of the Aron? Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Eliezer. Two different opinions. Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Eliezer. Chad Omar Pnei Ish el Achiv. One of them said that they were facing each other. Chad Omar Pnei Lebayis. And the other opinion was that they were back to back. Their faces were in opposite directions. So ask the Gemara, Ulamad Omar Pnei Ish el Achiv Haksiv Upnei Lebayis. For the opinion that says that they were facing each other, but there's a pasuk in Divrei Yomim which says Upnei Lebayis, that they were opposites, in opposite directions to each other. Answers the Gemara Loi Kasha. It's not a question. Why? Kan bezman shisol oisin ritzonon shel, that when the Jews are doing the Ratzon of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then the kruvim face each other. Kan bezman she'en yisol oisin ritzonon shel, but when they're not doing the Ratzon of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so then they're back to back with their faces in opposite directions. That's what the Gemara says, Gemara in Bava Basra. How can it be that the Gemara in Yuma says shenichnasu nochim leichel ro kruvim ha'ma'orin zeh b'zeh, that they were embracing each other? How can that be? The Gemara just said that they only ever embraced each other when they were doing the Ratzon of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When they weren't doing the Ratzon of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, they didn't embrace each other. It's a whole series of Perushim trying to explain how it can be that they were embracing each other. The Migash, cited in the Shita Mekubetzes, says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to show the non-Jews the extent of His love for Klal Yisrael. That even when we're sinning, nothing could remove that love. That the non-Jews should see as they go in to the Kodesh HaKadoshim, when they see the Aron, that they should see the kruvim embracing each other, as if to say that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will never let us go, that His love for us is eternal. Chaim Shmulevitz explains the point at the moment the Klal Yisrael's sins are being brought to the fore at the Churban HaBayis, when it's clear that we're not doing the Ratzon of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That it was imperative for the non-Jews to see that the essence of Klal Yisrael is pure and uncorrupted. It could be that we behave in a way that's not the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to behave, but our essence remains pure. And the embrace of the kruvim, that was the way to teach that lesson. Say the Bnei Yissaschar. V'hinei, very poignant words. V'hinei, nuchal lisboinei be'inyan ava gashmias. We can learn from the concept of love in this physical world that we live in, the love of great friends, the love that exists between a husband and a wife. When you see them together, when they spend all of their time together, it's not so apparent, the love that exists between them. It's not so clear to be seen from the outside. Masha ein kein, sherotzim lipared, that when they need to separate from each other, and they need to go away from each other for a period of time, as yispalu hanafosho yisba'ava yisera ava aza migod lagaguim, and then all of a sudden you'll see the extent of the love, the strength of the love, because already those feelings of longings to see each other have been awakened. Ask the Zohar Kodesh, who's greater, Klal Yisrael or the Malachim? Answer to Zohar Kodesh something fascinating. Says the Zohar Kodesh, on Shabbos, Klal Yisrael is greater. During the week, the Malachim are greater. Something about Shabbos over here we need to try to understand. Says the Pasuk, Parashat Bechukoisai, Oz tirtzei ha'oretz es shabtzoiseo, Kol yemei hashomo, v'atem be'eretz oiveichen, Oz tishbas ha'oretz, v'hirtzos es shabtzoiseo. What's the Pasuk say? That the land needs to be appeased. Shemitah years that weren't kept, HaKadosh Baruch Hu promises that when we go into exile, when we go into Golus, then the land will be able to be appeased for all of the Shemitahs that weren't kept. Chazal teach, everybody here knows, I'm sure, that in Bayit Rishon there were 70 Shemitah years that were abused. And because there were 70 Shemitah years that were abused, there were 70 years of Golus Bavel. Chad keneged echad. Says it Tiferet Shlomo. Va'atem be'eretz oiveichem. When you're in Golus, as tirtzei ha'oretz shabsoseh, then your Shabboses will be desired. Tiferet Shlomo says the most extraordinary thing over here. It says it Tiferet Shlomo that the Shabboses in Golus are even happier than the Shabboses when the Beis Hamikdash stood. How can that be? Explains to Tiferet Shlomo, because that's all we have left. Beis Hamikdash has been taken away. The only thing that gives us a break from Golus is Shabbos. And that means that Shabbos brings with it a delight, a beauty that can only exist when we're in Golus. And he writes, listen, Ki b'zman Beis Hamikdash lo haya Shabbatim tovim ke'ele. In the time of the Beis Hamikdash, they didn't have Shabbos like that. In the time of the Beis Hamikdash, they didn't have Shabbos like we have Shabbos. Says the Pasuk in Parashas Kedoshim. Es Shabbos hoisai tishmoru umikdashi tiro. The Pasuk juxtapositions Shabbos with the Beis Hamikdash. Finally, I must explain that if we keep Shabbos the way that we're supposed to, it's as if the Beis Hamikdash is still standing. And if the Beis Hamikdash is still standing, then that means that for that Shabbos we're not in Golos. There's something extraordinary about the Shabbos and the way that it fits in with Chorban Abayis, and the way that it fits into our lives. Yeshivat Ohr explains that every day of the 3 weeks, every hour within every day of the 3 weeks are times of din. Kodesh Baruch Hu is judging us from his attribute of judgment. But on Shabbos, says Yeshivat Ohr, the din is turned to rachamim. Let's have a look and see. Says a pasuk in Parshas Shlach. Vayu bnei Yisrael b'midbar, vayimtzu ish mekoishesh eitzim b'yom haShabbos. We're all familiar with this story. In the Midbar, the second Shabbos that Klal Yisrael were in the Midbar, somebody went out and did something which was completely forbidden to do. Mekoishesh eitzim, he gathered together sticks on Shabbos. There's a diyun in the Gemara in Shabbos on Daf Tzadik Vav. Who was the Mekoishesh eitzim? Rabbi Akiva says that the Mekoishesh eitzim was Tzlofchad. Who is Tzlofchad? We don't know very much about Tzlofchad. Who is he? Tzlofchad, of course, is famous because he had 5 daughters who weren't married. They were the ones who came to Moshe Rabbeinu to ask for a nachla inside of Eretz Yisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu was unsure. He waited for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to tell him what the halacha was. Rabbi Akiva learns all of this out because one of the things that the daughters of Tzlofchad said was that their father wasn't involved in the rebellion of Korach in the Midbar, and yet somehow or other he died in the Midbar. So Tzlofchad is a Mekoishesh eitzim. He went out and he gathered up sticks. Why was he doing something like that? Clearly it's also. Say Chazal, Tzlofchad is kaven l'shem shamayim. Everything he did l'shem shamayim. Because Tzlofchad saw that already in the build-up to the second Shabbos in the Midbar, that there was a slight demeaning of the chashivas, of the importance and the kedusha of Shabbos. Something was missing. So he went out deliberately and was machal Shabbos to show Klal Yisrael just how serious it is to desecrate the Shabbos. The general assumption in the Gemara, and for sure by Rabbi Akiva, is that Tzlofchad was a tzaddik. Tzlofchad is kaven l'shem shamayim. His kavanos were good. His kavanos were great. And yet, Tosfos write that if Klal Yisrael would only have kept the second Shabbos in the Midbar, no nation would have been able to rule over us. There wouldn't have been a Churban Bayis Rishon, never mind a Churban Bayis Sheni. There would have been no Goliath, there would have been no exile, no national calamities. Tzlofchad was a tzaddik. Everything he did l'shem shamayim. And say Tosfos, but because of him, our future was infinitely worse than it was supposed to be. Says Rasim Chazisul Broidi. Dava Poshet. Says there's a fundamental lesson. Needs to be learned from the Makoshi Sheitzim. Never take the law into your own hands. Follow the Shulchan Aruch. That's what it's there for. Don't say that what you need to do is a greater good or has a higher purpose than what the Shulchan Aruch says needs to be done. But Labaisa, it's not always so easy to see and to recognize the subtle differences and the nuances between what truly is the right thing to do and what isn't truly the right thing to do. Tell over a story, Maisa Shahoya, a true story in the yeshiva in Volozhin. There was a bocher learning in the yeshiva over there who was known to have the most encyclopedic knowledge in the whole yeshiva. From all the bocher. That's not bad. Yeshivas Volozhin, in its day, the time of Chaim Volozhiner, had 400 bochrim learning over there. They were the cream of European Jewry. And this bocher, he knew more than everybody else. You're probably thinking to yourselves, no, what's a big deal? Yeshivas, how many masechtas are they learning in yeshiva? 6 masechtas, 8 masechtas, then they go back and they repeat the cycle again. No, not in Volozhin, it wasn't like that. In Volozhin, they started with brachas and they ended with niddah. They learned everything. And this bocher was the biggest boki from all of the bocher there in the yeshiva. The biggest expert was this bocher over here. This bocher was once eating lunch, and somebody came in and asked him a question. Another bocher came and asked him a question, and he didn't know the answer. And then someone else at the table answered, it's a beferish tesis. And the bocher was beside himself. He'd forgotten a tesis. How could it be? What did he do? Right there in the middle of the meal, he just got up. He didn't finish eating. He didn't bench. He ran to the nearest shul and he made a neder. He made an oath that he was going to learn for 7 years straight. That's what he did. Learned for 7 years straight. There was just one problem, he didn't bench. Now you understand that Volozhin is a Litvish yeshiva, right? Everyone else in the world is saying this bocher is unbelievable. He went and learned for 7 years straight, and he probably knew Kol HaTorah Kula backwards and forwards. And in Volozhin, they're asking the Rosh Yeshiva, hold on a second, did he do the right thing or he didn't do the right thing? So listen to what Rav Chaim Volozhin has said. It says Rav Chaim, he definitely did the wrong thing, there's no doubt. But if he would have stopped to bench, in those intervening minutes, the passion of the moment would have passed. And then he would have never made that neder, and he would never have gone to sit and learn for 7 years straight without interruption. It's not a small matter to walk away from the Dioraisa B'ich Samaz. But if he would have waited, the inspiration would have dissipated, would have just disappeared into thin air. That's a Gemara in Shabbos. Daf Kuf Nun. Tana Rabbanan, the Braisa. Maisa b'chosid echad, shenifritz aloi peretz b'soich sadeu, v'nimlach aleh legoydra. Chosid echad, a righteous person, was walking around in his field, and he sees there's a hole in the fence. And he decides, I have to fix a hole. Oops. V'nizkar sheShabbos hu. He didn't do anything. He didn't even say anything. He just thought to himself, I need to fix a hole in the fence. And then he remembered that it was Shabbos. V'nimtzoi oisei chosid v'loi godara. So he was makabel on himself. He says, you know what, I'm not going to deal with it. I made a decision that I'm going to do something which is forbidden to do on Shabbos, even though he didn't do it on Shabbos. And because of that, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to leave the hole by itself, and what will be, will be. Says the Gemara, V'nasa lo ineis v'olsa bot slof. HaKadosh Baruch Hu made a little miracle for him. And a tzlaf, a caper bush, started growing where the hole was, to fill up the entire hole. But that wasn't all, says the Gemara. Umimena aita panasosoi or panasas anshi beisoi. Not only was the hole filled up with the caper bush, but he received his panasa from this caper bush, not just him, but the ones that came after him as well. Says the Ritva. He was a shoygeg. He forgot that it was Shabbos. He wasn't obligated to stop himself from having any hana, any benefit from what he thought about on Shabbos. If he would do it on Motzei Shabbos, would he do it on Sunday? Says the Ritva, that's why the Gemara says that it's talking about a chosid echad. He was a chassid, he was a righteous person, someone who went further than just what's allowed or what's not allowed. He gave himself a self-imposed punishment, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave him a reward because of it. It says Ben Ish Chai, Ben Yoyoda, in the name of the Arizal, the most exquisite chiddush over here. That chosid echad was a gilgul of tzlafchad. The neshama of tzlafchad, who made the mistake of being Mechalel Shabbos, was given the opportunity to come back in another body and to make a tikkun, to rectify the mistake that he'd made. Where does this kiddush come from? That he's a gilgul of tzlafcha. Where's it hinted to? Says the Arizal, once he rectified the mistake of not doing something on Shabbos that was forbidden to do, so what did HaKadosh Baruch Hu do? He allowed a caper bush to grow with it. Tzlof chad. One caper bush. Says the Arizal, that's the remez, that's a hint that this chosid echad was tzlafchad from the midbar. Says the Gemara Numa, Omer Eish Lakish B'shah shenechasu nochim leichol ro kruvim hama oivin zeh b'zeh. The kruvim were embracing each other. Rabbi Yonas Naibashitz, that's the most astonishing chiddush over here. Mamish, something completely and absolutely different from everybody else. Something completely new. Why were the Kruvim embracing each other? It's a time of the Churban. How can it be? So he cites Yerushalmi. Yerushalmi Tainus. The walls of the Beis HaMikdash in Bayis Rishon were breached on Tet Tammuz. The Bavlim entered the Beis HaMikdash 21 days later on Rosh Chodesh Av. That was when they saw the Kruvim embracing each other. They didn't destroy the Beis HaMikdash immediately. The Churban took place 9 days later. Says the Gemara, Bavli and Tainus, Rosh Chodesh Av was Shabbos. How do we know that? Because the Gemara says that the Churban of Bayis Rishon and the Churban of Bayis Sheni was on a Sunday. That means the original Tisha B'Av, or the original Tisha B'Avs, were on Sunday, just like this year. If so, says Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz, Rosh Chodesh Av was on Shabbos, and that's why the Kruvim were facing each other. Despite all of the Chatoim, despite all of the things that Klal Yisrael were doing that was wrong, it was Shabbos. Shabbos is a day of perfection. And if Shabbos is a day of perfection, it's a day when there are no sins. And if there are no sins, then the Kruvim can embrace each other. Ma'orin zeh b'zeh. So koyach is Shabbos. Shabbos allows us to transcend the here and now. The power of Shabbos can keep us going even through the most agonizingly difficult times. Listen to this story. A few years ago, an elderly woman felt that her end was near, revealed to her son a very painful memory. She'd suppressed it for almost 7 decades. She told her son, when I was in the concentration camp, the rations that we got were so small, we were always starving. And yet one of the girls in the barracks would put away a little bit of her bread ration every single day in order to eat it l'chavod Shabbos Kodesh. I knew where she kept that bread, and one day couldn't resist, and when no one was watching, I went and I ate it all up. And when Shabbos arrived, the girl discovered that her incredible self-restraint was all for nothing. And she told her son, I know that that girl survived. I don't know where she is today, but please, she begged, please, find her and ask her to forgive me so that I can die in peace. Son was shocked to his core by the story. Started making inquiries. He wanted to do what his mother had told him, hoping desperately that the other girl was still alive. And with true siyata dishmaya, he tracked down the name and the contact information of one of the children of that woman. And he phoned him up. And he told him, he said, my mother is still alive, but she's very weak and she's bedridden. So he told him the story. And he asked him to go to his mother and beg forgiveness from his mother. Hours later, he was at his mother's bedside, and slowly he reminded her of the incident so many years ago. And his mother became very agitated. She told him, how do you know about this story? She demanded, how did you know? And then she told him, I knew already then who stole my bread. And I never told anybody about it ever, because I forgave her already back then. So much Mesiras Nefesh for Shabbos. Over the years of Jewish history, people have sacrificed everything in order to be able to keep Shabbos, including their meager rations in the concentration camps. And yet, Shabbos is such a day of tranquility. Rabbi Yisachar Doiv from Belz was once very impressed. There was a bocher in Vienna who studied with the most incredible hasmada, with the most incredible concentration throughout the whole of Shabbos. And after Havdalah, Rabbi Yisachar Doiv went over to speak with the bocher. He wanted to know who he was. So the bocher told him, he said, I was drafted into the army. I had to work on Shabbos. There's no chochmas. You have to do what you're ordered to do. So I went to the head of the platoon and I asked him if he would let me take off Shabbos, and in exchange I would work extra hours during the rest of the week. And he agreed. So I realized this was a miracle. This is not normal. So he said, I made a Kabbalah to make Shabbos a day solely for Torah. Rabbi Yisachar Doiv, who was so amazed, so inspired by this bocher, that he said, who knows? Maybe this bocher is holding back the Geula, maybe he's holding back the redemption. Because in the Shamayim they have so much nachas ruach from his Mesiras Nefesh for Shabbos. And when the Mashiach comes, that Mesiras Nefesh won't be there. Maybe he's stopping the Geula from happening. But he added immediately, but nevertheless, the Mashiach should come b'mheira v'yameinu. By the way, you're all familiar with the phrase b'mheira v'yameinu. What does that mean? It's a little bit odd. B'mheira v'yameinu should happen speedily in our days. If it happens speedily, then it will be in our days, no? Gad Leisner, the famed tzaddik and legendary mashgiach and mashpia in Gur, used to explain like this. The Pasuk in Tehillim says, Ki ele shanim beinecha, ki yom esmol. Chazal explain that one day in the eyes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is like a thousand years in our reality. So he says, we ask b'mheira v'yameinu. It should be speedily in our days, in what we look at as being a day, not the days that HaKadosh Baruch Hu looks at, which is 1,000 years as far as we're concerned. Transpires that Shabbos is the key to the redemption. Varan Shabbos and Daf Nun Ches Omid Beis. Says the Gemara, Goy Shabbos Chayiv Misa. If a non-Jew keeps Shabbos in its entirety, they should be put to death. Says the Chidush Yarim, it's important that we do tshuva on Erev Shabbos before Shabbos comes in, so that we enter Shabbos in a state of purity. We must ensure that we remove all of the impurities so that we can experience Shabbos the way that it's supposed to be. Goy Shabbos Chayav Misa. We have to work on ourselves to only be Jews when we walk into Shabbos, to remove every vestige of what's not correct, what's not pure, in order to experience Shabbos properly. That's why the Slonim Rebbe, Beis Avraham, explains the most beautiful idea. He says that's the inference of the bracha that we recite over lighting candles. La'adlik ner shel Shabbos, la'adlik ner shel Chanukah. Says the Slonim, La'adlik doesn't just mean to light the candles, it means to ignite the fire of Yiddishkeit inside of ourselves, in our own hearts. To bring Shabbos into our lives. According to that astonishing Chiddush of Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz, to bring Shabbos into our lives to the point where the Kruvim embraced each other. Shenichnasu nochim leichol, Rol kruvim ama oirin zeh bezeh. When I was 14, came to Eretz Yisrael for the summer. Went to stay with my uncle Shlita. And one Shabbos he decided to send me off to a friend of his who lived in Mattersdorf. And on Friday night we went to daven in Torah Ohr. Chaim Pinchas Scheinberg, Zatzal, it's a Rosh Yeshiva. My host warned me that Rav Chaim Pinchas Scheinberg doesn't speak Divrei Chulin on Shabbos. Only Divrei Torah. So after Shabbos, we all lined up to say Good Shabbos. And when it was my turn, my host explained to the Rosh Yeshiva who I was, and I was here for the summer. And he gave me a pat on my cheek, and he gave me his hand for Good Shabbos, but he didn't say a word. And his face shone with Kedusha. Never seen anything like it before in my life. And all these years later, those words that he didn't say stick with me. I need to learn how to use Shabbos properly. Listen to this incredible sensitivity. Rabbi Yaakov Bender, Rosh Yeshiva in Dachei Torah, New York, says that he has two rules when he phones parents to tell them something they probably don't want to hear about their kid. He says the first thing, he always says, "Hello, this is Rabbi Yaakov Bender, your child is fine." That's the first thing he says. Why? Because you know that when children get phone calls from the principal, so they normally brace themselves to hear the worst thing possible. So he tells them, your child is fine. And the second policy Rav Bender has is that whatever the child has done, however bad it is, he never ever suspends a child on Erev Shabbos. That's all you need to ruin somebody's Shabbos. Kid gets thrown out of school. Kid suspended. Kid is flunked. The kid will sit there at the Shabbos table with this just having happened to him, and it will ruin the entire Shabbos, not just for the kid, but for the whole family as well. Such sensitivity. Because everything is dependent on how we relate to Shabbos. And everything is dependent on what we expect from Shabbos. We're supposed to be keeping Shabbos because Hashem rested on the seventh day when He created the world. If we keep Shabbos in order to rest for the next week, then we just made Shabbos subordinate to the rest of the week. That's a terrible mistake. Hashem didn't rest because He was tired. Hashem rested on Shabbos because He made Shabbos holy. He made it that we should work the entire week to be able to have Shabbos as a day of ruchnius and of kedusha. Rabbi Moshe Levi Sassov used to tell over a moshel. Someone wanted to invite a very important person to his home. So in honor of this guest, he ordered good food, he hired the best musicians, he cleaned his house, he put in more lighting, everything was perfect. But he forgot one detail, he forgot to invite the guest. Says Rav Moshe Levi Sassov, those are the people, they clean their homes for Shabbos, they cook good food for Shabbos, they light candles for Shabbos, all in honor of Shabbos Kodesh. But they forget to rejoice together with the Shabbos. Everything's ready. They just forgot to invite Shabbos into their homes. That's the meaning of the pasuk. V'kara'asa l'Shabbos oinig. Shabbos is an oineg, something that we need to enjoy, something that we need to delight in. Shabbos is an oineg. Call Shabbos, invite Shabbos. Just don't forget to make Shabbos a guest of honor. My wife's grandfather wasn't a tremendous Talmid Chacham, he wasn't a world famous rabbi, but he was a tzaddik. And whenever we used to phone him on Motzei Shabbos to ask him how Shabbos was, he always answers with the same refrain: Shabbos is always good. It took me a long time to understand what he was saying. It could be that a person's just had a lousy Shabbos. It could be that it wasn't enjoyable. But my wife's grandfather is saying Shabbos is always good. If your Shabbos wasn't enjoyable, it's not Shabbos' fault. It's the fault of the person who's not enjoying it. The Sfas Emes says that the word Shabbos comes from the Lashon Lashuv, to return, because on Shabbos we return to the domain of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. During the week we try to allow HaKadosh Baruch Hu into our domain, but on Shabbos we enter into HaKadosh Baruch Hu's domain. I'd like to end with a story. Truly a poignant story. Rabbi Michal Lasri, one of the biggest influences in the Hebrew-speaking Baal Tshuva world today. His inspiration is felt throughout the world, on every continent. Not so many years ago, he experienced a personal tragedy. His young son drowned. Whilst he was sitting Shiva, the Shiva was very busy, as you can imagine. And among the many people who came was a group of pretty rough and tough looking teenagers. Piercings, tattoos, shaved heads, the works. But underneath those rough interiors were Jewish neshamas. They were Rabbi Lasri's Hasidim. Their inner essence had been touched by Rabbi Lasri. And they came to be Menachem Ovel him out of their immeasurable love. And before they left, they told him that as a gesture, Le'ilui Nishmas, to elevate the soul of his son, that they'd all committed to keeping one Shabbos. They were going to keep this Shabbos, they were going to keep. That very week, Rabbi Lasri was incredibly touched. And he embraced each one emotionally and he thanked him. When they'd left, the others in the room turned to Rabbi Lasri and they said to him, one Shabbos? All they're going to keep is one Shabbos? How about keeping Shabbos from now on? To which Rabbi Lasri replied, do you know what I would give to spend just one more Shabbos with my son? To take him with me to shul? To share a story with him? To sing zmiros with him? To pinch his cheek just one more time? I would give everything I owe for just one Shabbos. Avinu Shebashamayim, our Father in heaven, misses his children, misses them terribly. How much would he enjoy spending just one Shabbos with them? One of the descriptions of Yemois HaMoshiach that we should experience B'mehera V'yameinu is Yom Shekuloi Shabbos. Here, when the Mashiach arrives, our entire week will reflect the tranquility and the spiritual delight that is Shabbos. The Shabbos that we have now. Shabbos that is perfection. Shabbos that returns us to Avinu Sheva Shamayim. Shabbos that allows the Kruvim to be Ma'orim, Zeh Bezeh. May we all be Zoiche to bask in the Yom Shekuloi Shabbos B'nei Rabbi Yameinu Amen.